In tonight's Tax Insider, Congress continues to wrestle over the budget. Today, the House Appropriations Committee released an $82 billion veterans and military construction spending bill. The bill earned a not so fast from House Speaker Paul Ryan. First, he wants Republicans to get on the same page and come up with a broader agreement over the budget. Joining me with the latest is David Williams, president of the nonpartisan Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Dave, let's start there. What is this construction bill all about?
So, Morris, this is the Veterans Affairs Military Construction Bill, and this is one of the 12 appropriations bills that Congress has to pass. When I say that they have to pass it, they usually don't pass it. They do a continuing resolution, but that's beside the point. But this is important for two reasons. One is the substance, and the second is the timing. First of all, the substance. The Republicans, they want to spend about $1.2 billion less than what the president wants, but here's the catch, is they want to spend $1.8 billion more than last year. And the biggest part of this bill is Veterans Affairs, because this is where a lot of the controversy has been the last year in the way that we're treating our veterans in the Veterans Administration. So I think that, you know, substance-wise, this is important, but timing-wise, Morris, it's even more important because the Republicans should have passed a budget by now.
Right.
And they usually pass a budget, then they do appropriations. Well, they've done this appropriations, or they started to do this one appropriations bill before a budget is passed. And that's what Speaker Ryan is cranky about. And I don't blame him, because here's a guy that wanted to get back to regular order, and that is just kind of, you know, gone now. No regular order.
Yeah, what a surprise. Last year, Congress reached a deal with President Obama on the budget. It resulted in higher spending levels. Now, as you said, Paul Ryan appears to be caught between a rock and a hard place. Some Republicans want to spend that money, others don't. Where's the middle ground here, Dave? It sounds like John Boehner all over again.
Well, funny you mentioned John Boehner, because this was John Boehner's budget from last year. Before he left, he said we're going to have $80 billion more in spending over the next 2 years, $30 billion this year. So this kind of set up the nonsense that we're seeing now. But keep in mind, Morris, that the additional spending actually passed a Republican Congress last year through the omnibus bill. So whether there's a middle ground or not, I think that it's going to pass. I think the budget's going to pass, and that these caps are going to stay in place, or the increase in the caps are going to stay in place. So the middle ground is probably veering to the left with additional spending.
You've studied this issue for a long time. You're a pro at it, and you've determined that Pentagon spending lacks any real reform. Tell us more.
This is probably the most frustrating part of the budget when it comes to Republicans, because the Republicans have this attitude about the Department of Education. They say more money at Department of Education doesn't make our kids any smarter. The same should be said for the Pentagon. Just spending more money at the Pentagon doesn't make us a safer country. They have not undergone an audit. They have the F-35 that cost $1 trillion, has numerous software problems, and then a new problem just kind of popped out of nowhere is this human terrain system. It's basically a program that embeds social scientists with combat troops to study them. They've spent $700 million since the year 2007, and the Pentagon, now get this, Morris, the Pentagon said, we got rid of the program 2 years ago. They didn't. They're still funding this program. So the Pentagon has lied to Congress, saying they got rid of this program. So the Pentagon is just ripe for change, for reform. And a lot of presidential candidates, remember Marco Rubio, he's gone now, but he wanted $1 trillion more in defense spending over 10 years. But you can't do that. You need reform. You need to know where the money is going.
You don't, and they don't know where all the chickens are.
Exactly.
And once you do, they don't know what to do with them. So where do we go from here? What's the most likely outcome?
The most likely outcome is that the conservatives, they're going to cause a lot of grief. They're going to make a lot of noise. But I think at the end of the day, a budget is going to get passed. A Republican budget will get passed, and it's going to keep that increased spending. Now, what they need to do is to look further down the road. And I'm not going to say entitlements, because there's no way they're going to talk about entitlements during an election year. Right. But they have to find ways to cut spending and find ways to pare back some of these bureaucracies.
Now, before you go, I'd like to talk about the Federal Aviation Administration. Yesterday, Congress passed an extension of FAA powers through mid-July to give lawmakers more time to work on an aviation policy measure. In short, some GOP leaders want to privatize the air traffic control system. Bring us up to date.
There is a lot of energy around privatizing air traffic control, mainly because it's done before. It's been done before in Canada and Great Britain with great success. Is that I think they're spending 50% less on this, and they're still a safe system up in Canada. The problem is you have the same old politics. You have the chairman of the committee that's pushing this privatization, who's getting involved in a bit of a personal issue with one of the lobbyists. So, that's going to detract from the message of privatization. And Morris, this is why people don't like Washington, D.C. This is why there's such a large amount of distrust, is that you hear about members of Congress and their relationship with lobbyists. So a lot of the message gets lost in that nonsense. And we're hoping that there can be a way forward to make sure that if we do privatize the air traffic control system, it's done in a way that keeps us safe and Congress gets to keep their oversight.
And well, it's easier said than done, but get the lobbyists out of the way. This whole thing was shelved after it was revealed in Politico that this Republican lawmaker was basically dating a lobbyist, perhaps, was very good friends with her. They were taking junkets to Florida. Anyway, it's outrageous. Critics say such a bill, though, would cede a congressional responsibility to a corporation. Do you share that concern?
Well, there have to be checks and balances in any sort of privatization. And, the fact of the matter is the budget, when we just talked about the budget, it's chaos. So one of the benefits of privatizing this, it takes it away from Congress budgetarily, if that's even a word. The FAA would still retain oversight of this nonprofit that would be doing air traffic control. So it's not as if we're just throwing air traffic control out to the birds and saying, okay, there's no oversight. There's still going to be oversight, and I think that's the critical point.
Always good to hear from you. David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.